Welcome.
It's time for the further adventures of Indiana Jones.
The greatest adventures of all time.
I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.
Pack your bag, grab your passport, and prepare to go globetrotting with Marvel Comics' classic four-color adventures of Indiana Jones.
Jones?
Mr. Jones, I've heard a lot about you, sir. Your appearance is exactly the way I imagined.
Son of a...
I'm here now. What do you want to talk about?
Welcome once again, Further fans, to the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. I am Joe Stuber. He is Keith Voss. Keith, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, Joe. How about yourself?
I'm doing excellent. More information on the Indiana Jones Blu-rays coming out. I've got some great stuff coming out of Comic-Con recently. What do you think of that?
Very cool stuff. I love the Well of Souls, I guess, kiosk or
Wasn't that cool?
That they made. Yeah, very cool stuff. And how about that Comic-Con trailer, huh? A lot of never-before-seen stuff. Very cool.
We knew the scene was out there. We just weren't sure what form it would take, but we've got the Arab swordsman scene. Looks like
if we get that. Yeah, I mean, we all want to see that. I'm just curious what else we're going to get. If it's supposed to be 7-8 hours worth of new stuff, I mean, I'm really hungry for some deleted scenes. I don't know about you. I mean, I loved getting all the deleted stuff on the Star Wars Blu-rays, so I'm really curious. And we've heard legends of all the Indiana Jones deleted scenes, like from Temple of Doom, from Last Crusade. I'm wondering if we're going to get all those things, or if we're just going to get very selected pieces.
I'd be just happy with the Arab swordsman scene in full. So I mean, that's pretty cool. But yeah, everyone behind this has promised previously unseen footage. We've seen we've gotten a little taste of that. Hey, Keith, that's not the only previously unseen indie material that's out there, though.
No, it's not. And on this very show, on this one, Joe, this episode you're listening to right now, we are revealing something that no indie fan, including ourselves, has ever seen before.
Yeah, we've got part 2 of our interview with Indiana Jones artist Kerry Gammill coming up. Great stuff coming out from this. Something that he had mentioned that we were totally surprised by, as we teased it in the last episode, previously unseen Indiana Jones artwork. So we'll see how the interview sort of plays out with that. Hey, it's the 1-year Further Adventures Indiversary. We're giving out another gift, another anniversary gift right here.
Yeah, that's right. It is our anniversary, but you're going to get the presents. Actually, it's a little bit of a present for us, too. I mean, this was something we've never seen before either, and we were just as excited as you guys are going to be. So
exactly. So let's pick up with part 2 of our interview. Last time we left off with Kerry discussing how he conveys emotions of the characters through the still pictures that he draws. We're going to go right back into this interview with part 2, talking a little bit about his inspiration from the original Raiders of the Lost Ark. Were you inspired by Raiders?
Oh, yeah. I saw it several times at the theater when it was new, and I remember just turning to my wife in the middle of it and saying, I've just been sitting here with this silly grin on my face. I just realized it, that the whole time watching this is just such a fun movie, and it just captures so much of the older films and the action and just it was just sort of the perfect action movie. And
how did that play in while you were doing the artwork on the books?
Well, of course, it had been out a while at that time, so and of course you don't have home video and stuff, or at least not legitimate, and so you couldn't go back and look at it a lot. But I just always tried to sort of capture as much of that feeling of the movie as I could.
How fun was it to work on an adventure like this? Because Michelini really gave you a nice palette there to work with this sort of jungle adventure, and you've got the Skull Cave, and all these warriors coming out and blow darts and all this, and you got a chance.
Atlantis.
How fun was that?
It was fun, but I looking at that particular story I have sort of mixed feelings, because I think this was the fastest I've ever done a story, because some personal situations I'm remembering now. I was renting a little studio that I was working out of, just an office that was a few miles from the house, and I had decided that I was going to work at home, so I had been building a little office room into part of our garage, converting that into a room that I could could work in, so I wouldn't have to be gone from the house so much. And so I was spending a lot of time finishing up that room as I was getting started on Indiana Jones, and so ended up having to finish this story pretty quick. And I got De La Rosa came up from San Antonio and stayed with me for a few days, and another friend of mine named Craig Miller, who wasn't a professional artist, but he had a independent comic called Renegade Rabbit, and he lived in Arlington and worked for the Lone Star Comics there, and so he's the only other guy I knew around that could draw some, and the three of us kind of worked 24 hours a day for a week or so and got this thing done. And looking through it, some of it looks atrocious to me, but we had to just crank it out.
Anything as far as editing, anything you wanted to get in the book that was edited out? I think it was, we've talked to some before that mentioned in some of the later books there was some censoring involved. Some things had to be done off panel. Was there anything that you wanted in that you just didn't get in?
No, I usually, just kind of wanted to know what the parameters were and was happy to work within that. I know that's the reason, I guess, that Byrne got off of it was that they changed something he wanted to do with, like, making India a zombie or something, or what was the story behind that?
With the gold statues coming to life?
Yeah, that was supposed to be, maybe it was, I don't know, some character that he wanted to actually have become a zombie, and they had to change it to that statue. If you look at it, you can tell Byrne didn't draw that character when he's coming out of the thing.
Interesting.
So that's the only real instance that I know of the censoring. The problem is when you're working with a licensed property like that, and so anything you do has to be passed through Lucasfilm, and they have to approve it.
Any problems with that?
Well, only that, if you happen to do anything that was close to something they were, thinking of doing in a later movie or something, then they, would want that changed. Of course, this was all done, I guess, in the script phase, so maybe I wouldn't necessarily know about it if anything in the story that they submitted was changed.
You came pretty close with Temple of Doom. I'm looking at that skull cave. And
yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I always wondered if they might pick up some ideas from stuff we did.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because the more we're going through these books, I mean, I don't know if you've seen all the other Indiana Jones films, Last Crusade and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but there's lots of little moments in these books that are used in the movies. Motorcycle sidecar chases, quicksand gags, all kinds of different gags. It's pretty interesting stuff. I think you guys laid the groundwork for the future Indiana Jones films.
Well, you never know if they're really looking at this stuff or they're thinking the same things. I remember this panel at the end of I guess it's issue 7, where they're Indy and Marion are in the cave and there's a growl behind them, and
it
says, "Indy, please tell me that was your stomach." And I remember that line turned up in some other film that I think was either a Lucas or Spielberg thing, and we always wondering if they got that, from the comic.
It's a great comedic moment too. I love the facial expressions on there.
Thanks.
9 and 10, you took off. Dan Reed came in as a penciler on Gold Goddess. Do you recall why you weren't able to do those books?
No. Well, like I said, I had to do number 8 so quickly because I had wasted a lot of time trying to finish that home office, thinking that I would be able to work so much faster once I got that office finished and was working there at home. I always had some excuse in my mind as why if I do this, I'll put off the work now, but I'll be able to do it a lot faster. So, but it never worked. I was always just finding some way to procrastinate about the stuff. So I guess since I was so behind on number 8, they said, well, let's get a couple of other fill-in stories, and then when you start back, with the, number 11, you'll be way ahead and everything. But of course, number 11, it looks pretty good, but I spent so much time on it that I ended up, being back where I was before too long.
Well, that's what Keith and I noticed, because the detail on issue 11 is amazing. You had a chance to also introduce a new character, Ben Ali Ayoub, in that adventure as well. A lot of detail going into this issue.
One of my favorite issues. I love the fourth nail. That opening splash page of Indy running through the desert, through the sandstorm, and the Aborigines chasing him. It is one of my favorite images throughout the series. Do you have any thoughts? Anything you could tell us on drawing that sandstorm chase?
Well, I'm looking at it right now, and he's awful bow-legged is the first thing that comes to mind. Which,
it's tough to run in the sand.
He's carrying a heavy load, it looks like, though.
That's right. Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's kind of hard to draw a sandstorm. I remember, wondering how are we going to pull this off, but and I guess Sam De La Rosa kind of did this sort of spatter effect on here. He must have masks off Indy, and then did a thing with it. There used to be a trick inkers would do where they'd put ink on a toothbrush or something and then kind of flick it onto the page. So that's probably how he did that sand in the background there.
Nice peek behind the curtain there. We thank you for that. And I'm also looking at the introduction of Ben Ali Ayoub, a technique you used throughout the series, that sort of circular panel. Was that was that an homage to the old Republic serials, where they sort of had, on the trailers they would have that circle coming in, or is that sort of
and sort of the old comics and pulps and serials and everything back then? That was something that they sort of used, so it just sort of gets a retro look, at least in my mind. So I'm glad you picked up on that too, when you do that sort of insert in a circle like that.
And then the following pages, a lot of expositional dialogue. Great stuff from Michelini. How tough is that on the artist?
Well, it's back then it was a little difficult to know where to leave room, because you didn't have the actual script back then. They called it Marvel style because Stan Lee had sort of perfected that, basically because he was writing so many books that he didn't have time to do all the scripts and give to the artist. He would just sort of do an outline of the story, and then after the artist turned in the work, then he would write the dialogue and sort of match what the artist had done. So that became the norm in comics for a long time. And so I, had the plot of the book. I didn't have all this dialogue, but I knew when or sometimes a writer would say, and leave plenty of room here for me to explain all this stuff. So you kind of had to second guess things a little bit and make sure that you left enough room in case, a character was making a big speech or something, but that you filled in, the blank areas with something, sort of interesting in case there didn't turn out to be as much dialogue as you thought, then, it just wouldn't look too vacant.
And then page 12, Indy travels to Barcelona. We've seen your original pencils on this. There's a little cameo in there, sort of a surprise cameo. Did your editor make his way into the book?
I don't know how that happened. It was a surprise to me.
Page 12, that last panel. Yeah, Elliot Brown. We talked to him about that. He sort of he said he got your pencils and said, I think I need to put a little bit more background here. So
yeah.
What do you think when you take a look at that and you see your editor in your adventure?
Yeah, it's fine with me. It's just, my first knee-jerk reaction is, hey, that's not my art, so what's it doing in there?
Yeah.
But it's a little fun thing, so it's fine.
He's admiring your art.
That's right. Everybody wants to get in the act, so.
You have a great fight scene here, too, where Indy goes up against a huge mountain of a guy. Were you inspired by watching the Indiana Jones German mechanic fight in Raiders, or was that just something you wanted to kind of do up on your own?
Well, of course, that was all in the script, but I'm sure it was inspired by that scene, and of course, that was such a powerful, fight scene in the movie. Of course, it's something you have to, it's one of those moments, like I was saying, the difference in comics and movie, that's almost a place where the two meet, because anybody getting hit in the face that hard, would not have a face left after a while. Just there would be bones crunching and things, but just the power of those punches and that big scary guy and that I'm sure is what we were going for here.
You had fun drawing that one, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I always loved the fight scenes and staging all this neat action and stuff, and I always just the Republic serials. That was their big forte, was doing those incredible fights and a lot of acrobatic stuff, and some of those stuntmen like Dave Sharp and Tom Steele. They could just do amazing stuff. So.
And I love the look on Indy's face there at the end of page 17 when he started climbing up over the ledge too. That looks like it's channeled directly from Raiders when he's escaping the temple at the beginning. Is that? I mean, you almost had to have seen that in your mind.
I'm sure. I mean, that was just part of what the character was like, and it's one of those type of scenes where you think everything is finished and get that little relief.
The expressions on Indy's face are just priceless in here, and I wish I could get the original artwork on that splash page at the end of the issue with Indy's face on the bull.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, he closed out with an incredible splash page. Let's go to issue 12, chapter 2, Swords and Spikes of the Fourth Nail Story.
I'm bittersweet about this one, Keith.
Oh, I know.
I got mixed feelings about this one. I know Kerry Gammill's leaving us with this one.
Yeah, yes. Unfortunately, you penciled only the first half of the book. Any?
That's right.
What happened with that?
Well,
and Luke McDonald, of course, took over. He went from pages 11 to 22. You only did pages 1 through 10.
Right. My wife was expecting our second child, who is now 28 years old. It'll show you how long ago this was.
Has he heard this story?
But yeah,
okay.
I blame him for it all the time. But he was a couple of weeks early, so and I was, like I say, at this point I was always late after doing the issue before and spending so much time on it. I'd eaten up every spare minute that I had as far as any leeway in the deadlines. So I was up against it again in this issue, and then when my son was born a little bit early, I just suddenly had other things to deal with, and so they got the other artist, I guess. Who did you say? Luke McDonald?
Luke McDonald, yeah.
Right. And I didn't even have it all penciled either up through the first 10 pages. I think I'd only drawn.
It looked like the breakdowns on the last few, like pages 8, 9, and 10, looked like maybe you just done some breakdowns, because that's what we thought too. The detail had shifted.
Yeah, I just had done little sketchy layouts. And I think I had up through like where they're leaving that boathouse thing and the oars are falling on that guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it ended, I guess. The rest of it is completely Luke's work.
Your thoughts on that? Just at the time, I know we're going back quite a bit of time, but what were your thoughts on that? Where you just, because it seemed like you really had a desire to do this book.
I did. I was disappointed that I had to leave it, but I just had to face the facts that it was taking me way too long to draw each issue. And I remember telling Louise Jones, when I couldn't finish it and they had to get somebody else in, I said, well, maybe I should just go ahead and get off of this book. And she was like, she didn't argue with me at all. Didn't try to talk me into staying. Just, okay, that's it. So,
a quote from Elliot Brown: "He was so darned late that it just hurt to keep using him."
Yeah.
But they wanted you. They wanted you on this book.
Yeah, they really did.
Well, I'm always flattered to hear stuff like that, but I just hate putting people through that. And like I said, I knew that I was just giving them a lot of trouble. And this, like I say, you, on a licensed property like this, you have to get the things approved by Lucas, so it couldn't be as late as a normal book that, you might have a little bit of leeway and things. They have to turn all this stuff into Lucas and get approvals. And so if you're running behind at all, it's going to really be much more serious than, if it's just an in-house book. So I thought it was just time for me to go, unfortunately.
Any regrets on leaving Indy behind?
Well, sure. I mean, I would have liked to have stayed if, the situation had been different, but I just couldn't keep putting them through it, and I just went on my quest to find something else that maybe I could do, on a monthly basis. Like I said, the main thing was that it was just a lot of research every issue, and I had, when you've got something that big that you're trying to live up to, those movies, then, it was a lot of pressure to do that. I spent a lot of extra time, making sure everything was right, and And if you had anything to draw, you had to make sure that it was accurate, or at least I wanted it to be accurate. So I'd have to make sure if I'm drawing a car or a plane or something that it looks like it, a real car or plane from 1938 or whenever it was. So.
Well, we appreciate those little details, that's for sure. I mean, going back and looking at these books now, I mean, we do appreciate all that detail.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
And I mean, Keith and I talked about this all the time, is that, I mean, obviously life comes first, and you had priorities at the time that had to be taken care of. But what a natural fit. I mean, you talk about a hand in glove. You and Indiana Jones, to me, the artwork on those first few issues is just nothing short of amazing.
Well, that's so great to hear, and especially like almost 30 years later, to have somebody that still appreciates it and looking at it is really cool.
We're having fun with it.
Yeah, we really are. Did you continue reading the series, or have you gone back recently and taken a look at the rest of the issues?
No, I really haven't. I guess something like that tends to make it sort of a sore spot. And
sure. Yeah.
So I just sort of turn my attentions elsewhere, and it was too painful to look at.
Well, I don't know about you, Keith, but I feel that Mr. Gammill owes us half a book from this.
Yeah.
If Dark Horse were to call today and say, you know what, we're looking at this artwork and this is really amazing, we want you to take another shot at Indiana Jones, what would the answer be?
I would probably do it. By the way, I almost did another Indiana Jones thing.
Do tell.
It didn't happen, that you guys were probably interested in. When the second movie was about to come out, and they did the adaptation of Temple of Doom. I'm trying to remember who was the artist that was doing it. The Butch Guy?
Butch Guice.
Acting guy? Mm-hmm. Yeah, apparently he was running a little behind, and Tom DeFalco, I guess, was editing it, and he, as a backup, in case Guice was late, he had me draw like the last chapter of it. I can't remember how many pages it was going to be. I think like 10 pages or something.
You did pencils on it?
And yeah. And they
Do you still have those pencils?
I have Xeroxes of them. I don't have the original.
Oh.
Would you scan them and send them to us for our Facebook page?
Sure.
Oh, we would love that.
You just made my week.
And they were pretty good too, I have to tell you.
Keith,
really
I'm done. I'm out. That's
Wow.
it. I can't top any of that. But unseen Kerry Gammill Indiana Jones artwork
From Temple of Doom, which is my favorite movie in the series. I mean,
you have no idea what you just said, Mr. Gammill. Yeah, the fanboy. I'm sorry, the fanboy just came out.
I think I got all the way up to the end because by the time I, got several pages into it, well, Tom said, well, it looks like Guice is gonna, meet the deadline, so don't worry about drawing the end of it now. But I had at least 6 or 7 pages, I think.
Oh, that's amazing. We cannot wait to see those. If you don't mind, if we can post those, that would be fantastic.
That would be great. I'd love people to see them.
Oh, awesome.
Listeners would I think, go crazy over that. They would love that.
Yeah, we want more Gammill Indiana Jones. That's what we want. What would you take the character if they called today and said, we're doing an adventure, where are you going to set him? 30s, 40s, 50s? Where do you want to go with it?
I don't know. I like the 40s and that kind of World War II setting a lot.
Would you like to write it?
I don't think I'd feel qualified to do that.
Because you've done some writing.
Yeah, I've done a little, but only in areas that I feel comfortable, like monster, stories and things, which is what I'm doing now. For the most part, I was out of comics for years. I got into doing concept art for a special effects company for a while, and so got into movies and TV, and I was doing designs for like the Outer Limits show and some movies like Phantoms and Virus and Species 2 and stuff like that. Give us that website, because all that work that you're talking about is posted on your website, and I've looked at it, and it's man, if you're a Gammill fan, you're going to love it. If you don't know his work, Mr. Gammill, give us that website, because you're going to get some new fans after this. Okay, yeah, it's just kerrygammill.com, and I've got little sections of my checkered career up there. We'll get those links on our website, but man, there's a lot of good stuff on there. Oh, thanks. And what are you working on now? Because it's Monster Kid Online magazine? That was something I started just as a hobby years ago. After I left the special effects place, I was hired by a local promo agency in Dallas, and I was doing just kind of pitch art, for kids' meal toys and things like that. So I did that for a long time, and then while I was working there, I got on the internet and started messing around with making a website and did something that's sort of my version of the old monster magazines that I used to grow up reading, like Famous Monsters and Mad Monsters and Castle of Frankenstein and all that stuff from the 60s. So I did a thing called Monster Kid magazine, and at that monsterkid.com. I haven't updated it in a long time. I need to do a new one, but I like messing with the graphics, and I'm big now working with Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator and stuff like that.
And you've also got some instructional books too, don't you? Or an instructional book?
Well, it turned out to be an instructional book just for marketing reasons. But I wrote a book for a friend of mine. There's a company called Vanguard Productions. David Spurlock is the publisher, and he's from Dallas, so I've known him for years. And he saw some of the work that I had done at the FX studio, and he does a series of books on different artists and things. So he put out a book of my work, but then he put this sort of how-to spin on it, because how-to books are big in demand with the distributors. And
just for our listeners, this is how-to. This is for monsters and superheroes?
Yeah, it's called, the actual title is Kerry Gammill's Drawing Monsters and Heroes for Comics and Film.
I'm in. I'm in. Those are the only words I need to hear. What more do you want?
That's right. So, but it's basically got, a lot of my stuff from the comics and the film work and some of the advertising work. And I don't really, give a sort of step-by-step, this is how you do it. But it's sort of just my thoughts on, these different types of work. And, I kind of explain what I was thinking while I was doing this or that. So I, give a little bit of, not really instruction, but just kind of explanation of what it's like doing this kind of work. But it wasn't really intended as a how-to book, but it just sort of, kind of straddles the fence into that type of world. But it just sort of, covers all the basic stuff that I've done in my career, because I can't seem to find one thing that I'm good enough at to stick with. But,
any plans to get back into comics?
Well, I actually am in comics back again after all these years with my own little company. I have a company called Monsterverse Entertainment, and I'm doing horror comic books. I don't do a whole lot of the art in them, just because I found out I don't have a lot of time to do it. But
you'd have to fire yourself.
I actually did fire myself. I was holding up issue 2 of our of the comic. Our main comic is called Bela Lugosi's Tales from the Grave, and we got a license from the Bela Lugosi estate to use him as the host of our book.
Oh, that's fantastic!
And so, before I was in the Marvel comics, the first actual comics I read on a regular basis were the Creepy magazine and Eerie magazine that were put out by Warren Publications, because they're the guys that did Famous Monsters. And so when they started advertising that in their back pages, I started buying that. And I didn't know anything about EC Comics at the time, but it was sort of a revival of that. And they had a lot of the great artists from EC and plus a lot of other. I mean, Frank Frazetta was doing their covers back then. That was the first time I'd seen his art, and they had guys like Steve Ditko and Gene Colan and Neil Adams, and just a lot of great, Al Williamson and Gray Morrow, and these really great illustrators doing these cool black and white horror comics.
The legends.
Yeah, so then that just was a big influence on me. So. A few years ago, I just kind of, wondered, well, what am I going to do now? I'm not really doing a lot of advertising work anymore, and I actually thought about trying to get back in with Marvel or DC, but I just am kind of too removed from that now. It's like, I don't know who those characters are anymore. They keep changing so much, and it's such a young, guys field now. You've got to sort of know what the kids are into and stuff. And
I've got 4 words for you. Are you ready?
Sure.
Indiana Jones versus Dracula.
All right. That would be something. I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Come on, that sounds like a natural. We've got to get you working with Dark Horse on this. There's got to be some kind of company crossover we can do here.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, one of the things we want to do with our Lugosi license is a graphic novel version of Dracula based on the Bram Stoker novel, but with Bela Lugosi as Dracula. So we kind of blend those, like the Universal Dracula, which was based on the Broadway play. So it's really not the direct adaptation of the novel.
Is that something we can expect?
Yeah, it probably won't be very soon, but that is, on the drawing board now. That's one of our big goals. But yeah, like I was saying, I actually was supposed to draw a story in the Lugosi second issue, and had to fire myself and and put another story in there, and put mine back later, and thought it's because it's so much work doing an anthology book, because it's like doing 5 comics at once. If you've got 5 different stories in there, and you're working with all the different teams, and I'm doing most of the production work kind of single-handed, which I enjoy. I like doing all the technical side of the comic. It's really neat after all these years to be able to actually put together a comic book, on a computer and do it all yourself. Used to be such a mystery, back then, wondering how the color was put on there, and of course the lettering, was this beautiful hand lettering. Now you just type it in and put a lettering font on there. And
well, that's what we were wondering. If you were doing Indiana Jones books today, you probably would have been on a longer run, because you're not FedExing things and mailing things in. Everything's electronic now, so we might have gotten a few more issues out of you if it had been done in the 2000s.
Could be, because you can't hide anymore.
They know how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, if you're late, you can just like not answer the phone or something. But now it's like, well, they're checking my Facebook page. And, they can tell any step I take out into the internet. So.
Big Brother is watching you.
Well, we still appreciate everything that you gave us, so thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it.
That's amazing. And you said a Facebook page? You got a Facebook page you want to promote?
Well, I just have a personal Facebook page. This is Kerry Gammill. And then the Monsterverse has a Facebook page. It's Comics from the Monsterverse.
Great. So that's probably the easiest way for fans to get a hold of you and tell you how much they appreciate your work?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. Mr. Gammill, thank you so much. Keith and I talked about we wish your run on Further Adventures had been longer, but man, what gems we got.
Well, that's so great to hear. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today on the IndyCast.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Well, Keith, Temple of Doom is your favorite Indiana Jones movie. What do you think about the gift we got from Mr. Gammill in the email?
What do I think about the gift? I mean, it was, oh my God. I mean, how cool is that stuff? I mean, something that we never even knew was out there. He's kept this to himself. He never released this anywhere else. At least we don't think he has. I mean, he told us he was the backup for Butch Geiss, who was possibly going to be running behind, and Gammill, ironically, was going to be his backup. And we get awesome, never-before-seen Temple of Doom art. Yeah, like you mentioned before, it is my favorite. It's not the best. That honor, like I've said many times before, goes to Raiders. But it is my favorite. For me, it has the most watchability factor. And to be able to get to see some lost temple, in my opinion, it's even better than what was actually printed.
Yeah, I mean, I threw that one part on in the interview about just joking, saying he owed us half a book. And then next thing you know, we get an email from Mr. Gammill with these pages, these unpublished pages of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom artwork. We're going to get those out to Ed for the Flickr page. We're going to get these up on the Facebook page. This is amazing. I said in the last interview that Kerry Gammill was my favorite Indiana Jones artist. This only cemented that, because not only his run was so short on it, but I thought the artwork that he did was amazing on the book. But then to see these pencils and comparing it side by side, I love the Temple of Doom adaptation. I love Butch Geiss's artwork in it. I think it's fantastic. But again, Kerry Gammill is my favorite. And when these pencils came into us and we saw this original Temple of Doom artwork that was unpublished, man, it was mind-blowing. I love this artwork, and as much as he was my favorite artist before, that just cemented that notion.
I totally agree, and it was very cool to see what could have been. What could have been for the Temple of Doom? I mean, like, I agree with you. I am a big fan of the Temple of Doom adaptation. It is also my favorite adaptation of the Marvel comics.
Yeah, I agree.
Of the films. And yeah, like I said, Butch Guice's work was great, but I mean, how cool would it have been to get a Kerry Gammill adaptation of Temple of Doom?
Well, we got part of it now. We've got these
part
pages.
of it now. That's right.
We're going to get them out to Ed for the Flickr page. Listeners can check these out. We'll get them up on our Facebook page, and it is just some amazing stuff. And I tell you what, Keith, this just continues. The Further Adventures Indiversary celebration, as we mentioned, is going to continue all summer long. We've got our review of Africa Screams. We're going to be heading into the jungle, Indy in the jungle once again. That's what we love. It's Kerry Gammill artwork that's coming up. We're going to review issues 7 and 8 on the next couple of IndyCasts, and also more surprise guests as we go along and get into issues 9 and 10.
A big surprise guest. Maybe somebody you guys have heard before on the show, but we're not going to reveal anything just yet. And we hope you guys enjoy this Temple of Doom artwork as much as we did.
Yeah, let us know, because we want to find out what everybody thinks of not only the artwork, but your favorite issues. Let us know about issues 7 and 8. We've got 9 and 10 coming up. We want to hear from you listeners. Keith, where can they send their emails?
thefurtheradventures@gmail.com, and you can go ahead and visit us on our Facebook page at The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. We hope to see you guys there.
Okay, that's it for the day then.
Well, that's all the time Professor Jones is going to give us for today. Keith, once again, thanks to Kerry Gammill for what
Big
a fantastic interview that was, and for the special Indiversary surprise that he gave to us, those unpublished pages from Temple of Doom, the adaptation that he was able to draw. They look fantastic. We can't wait to share those with the listeners, and just more surprises coming up along the way.
Yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed everything, and we're looking forward to having you join us once again on the next episode of The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.